We're live on the air. You're listening to WKDW Radio 97.5 and KDWRadio.com, broadcasting from the Bishop West Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in beautiful, calm Northport, Florida. I hope everybody else is having a great day out there. And I've got my good friend, Commissioner Phil Stokes, in the house today for a lengthy discussion about Northport, what's happening, and really the excitement about living in one of the best cities and the fastest growing cities in the nation. How about that? How you doing, Phil?
I'm doing great, John. Good to see you.
Awesome. So, I got to share. I've had hell on wheels kind of day today, but I promised Phil I would smile all day long and keep my day going. So I hope you guys can too out there in listening land, and really appreciate the fact that there is a ton happening in Northport, isn't there, Phil?
That there is. I mean,
So what are some of the things that you guys have been working on as commissioners? Now, I've got another Commissioner Emmerich, coming on, and then I've in another week I've got City Manager Jerome coming on, and this is going to be kind of fun to have three back to back, because there's a lot of excitement happening out there. So kind of highlight some of the things that are going on for people.
well, there are a lot of excitement revolving around Route 75 and Toledo Blade. Obviously, there in the past few months we've moved forward the project for Toledo Village, which is a couple of thousand acres, which involves 3,000 plus homes, a private
Yep.
golf course, and then a 20-acre public park, which will be available to all Northport citizens. Um, that's the project that started back before the recession. That project was in place to be a couple of thousand single family homes. The recession pretty much shut it down for a while, and they brought it back to life. And based on really the city's needs, they've modified that development to include starter single families, townhomes, coach homes, villas. So it's more of a blended type of community with a variety of housing types at different price points, which is really what the city needs more than more single family platted properties. And they'll have some downtown villages with amenities, and that abuts Northport Gardens, which is the pretty much in commercial and industrial program. That developer controls both those projects, and I kind of look at them as a package because the balance between the two is going to give us an awful lot of non-residential development, which we badly need. So there's those two, plus now Toledo 320, which is that uh, 320 acres that was pretty much non-zoned. It sits below Orange Hammock. It sits on the other side of Toledo Blade from the estates, and that's going to have a light industrial warehousing primarily, probably be similar to the kind of stuff Benderson's done on the frontage on Toledo, and then some combination of residential in the back area. And those packages together with all the infrastructure changes and the improvements to Toledo Blade, new landscaping, a whole lot of things will really pop that area. And in connection, there was, I think we had a $1.7 million grant to help put some of that infrastructure in, and it required us to produce a little under 2,000 jobs. So, again, a major step forward, we think, in our efforts to help people not only live in Northport but work as well. So there's that. There's Mineral Springs, which by, I'd say, the end of the year, very early next year, we should have a good look-see at the development agreement between us and our P3 partner. Uh, we're also working to see how soon they may be able to take over the day-to-day operations, and we're moving forward with the geological surveys and some of the other studies that need doing. So that project's moving along. We've been spending time. Staff's been working diligently to finish up the last couple chapters of the ULDC, and we did spend some time at our last commissioners meeting discussing activity centers and what can be done to develop them to their maximum with regard to non-residential development. And also, you know, as we go forward, there'll be some workshops, I'm sure, on second part of chapter 4 and 5, with the aim in mind of hopefully no later than the end of February getting that ULDC before the commission. So there's all that, plus the exciting news that the court, 12th Circuit of Sarasota, rendered her judgment or her decision regarding de-annexation. And she basically indicated in her decision that Northport had met the burden of competent substantial evidence required to support the rejection of the petition for de-annexation. So, you know, while the movement's not dead as a doornail, it's a nail in the coffin. They will appeal it. John Meisel said he will, but who knows if the appellate court will even take it on. They really got to find a matter of law to hang it on, but it's rare that, you know, on appeal these things get reversed. And the other writ of mandamus is a writ that, in light of this current decision, will probably go the same way against West Villages for Responsible Government. So if all goes well, by come time spring, we're hoping the annexation will just be a thing of the past and we can move forward. It's time to, you know, end this lawsuits and all this back and forth and all the wasting of tax money and citizens' money on something that never should have been brought forth before. I mean, all the reasons for it don't exist anymore, and this is just pretty much one man's personal agenda. So.
And I do have a question though, because, and I not that I'm by myself in this, because I'm sure that there are listeners out there wondering the same thing. We have a huge debt because of this, in as far as legal fees.
Mm-hmm.
Are we going to go after that group and collect the fees for the legal attorneys because they were wrong?
Well, you know, firstly, it's a great question, because it's the same question I've been asking myself since the decision. I've yet to be able to speak to city attorney. I have a one-on-one next week with her, and I intend to ask exactly that question. To the extent that we have a legal right to go after that. And again, I don't know that that can happen until any appeals are exhausted. But assuming at the end of this process, and we continue to be successful, if we have the legal right, as far as me personally as a sitting commissioner, I can't speak for the rest of my fellow commissioners, but I certainly would support doing exactly that. You know, taxpayers' money was used to defend themselves against this litigation, and we have a right to get that money back, whether it's from, you know, West Villages for Responsible Government or John Meisel himself, since the two are tied integrally in this litigation. So we'll see what happens. But I'll be able to update you more once I talk to city attorney. I don't know what our legal options are there. If this may be something each party bears their own legal expense for, or if you can in fact go after them.
Sure. So, you know, I've been watching some videos and interesting enough, learning more about infrastructure within city, and how we should look at things. And I want to point things out to people, because there's a tax base that everybody says, hey, we have a Walmart, hey, we have a Home Depot, hey, we got a Lowe's. Well, those are great things to have in a city, but on a tax level, if you did the math, and this video that I was watching actually did that and it broke it down, but we don't collect as much tax base from a Walmart or a Lowe's or a Home Depot as we would a really good mixed use piece of property that really brought in more dense type of tax base, correct?
Yeah, I would say commercial and light industrial, give you the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to tax revenues. Retail's a lot later, but it all contributes. It really does all contribute. And I think, you know, as we move forward and plan out the next 3 to 5 years, I think we'll start to focus on, as these projects start to get closer to being actual, full realities. I mean, Welland Park is already up and operating. It's only 1/3 built out, but revenues are being produced. And I think that's the key, is to be able to look at these various projects and overlay them and see, gee, what kind of range of revenues are we talking about? But yeah, to answer your question, light industrial and commercial development gives you the biggest bang for the buck. And the tough part about that is getting the infrastructure in place to be able to attract those kinds of businesses. You're seeing Benderson, just last week we approved the next step in their phase 2 along Toledo Blade. They already have a lot of tenants for that next phase, according to what we heard. So that's tremendous.
I would just put sold out on it already.
Could be, could
I
be.
know. I'm not even going to question it. The minute that they start construction and
Yep.
people see it, so that's kind of like the difference we see now, is that people start a project, and the minute the project gets started, they think it's born. Well, it was born a year ago,
Yep.
and it's taken that long to get to that point. But strategically, they're a year late on getting their places to rent, because they're these companies that are out there building these projects in strip malls, they're not waiting until it's done to get the leases in line. They're doing it
They're
with
lining
with
it up.
with knowing that right now they're 50% leased and they got to get it built.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And I do look forward to that kind of development. I know out at East, near the Shires, that activity center is, it's still so many years out because of the need for the interchange and the need to bring infrastructure there, and that's going to be the biggest shot in the arm, because that is the most land available. But you can't forget about Sumter. Just because a hospital, is like, already going to be a cornerstone there. They don't pay taxes. You're going to look at everything else in that surrounding area as that infrastructure is rebuilt, and all that four corners basically fills in with all kinds of businesses that support, medical. You're going to see huge revenues, and that whole area will transform itself. That's an exciting piece, and that's coming. I mean,
For
sometime
sure.
over the next handful of years, you're going to start to really see that transformation,
Yeah.
especially here at Sumter in 75.
Well, we've been having some, and I know that I'm going to continue this for the next three shows, just because of the fact that we've got Commissioner Emmerich and then City Manager Jerome Fletcher coming on. These these topics, these communications that we have now with the tax base and trying to analyze them, these are not just important to understand for the city and its growth, but it's also very important for citizens
Yeah,
to get really good, solid information versus, you know, listening to somebody out there that it doesn't want growth and they're against it all. But there's a flip to that. So you've got this battle of, we need more revenue. We need to look at the revenue. We need to structure it smart and position it well and build our city because we've got that capability. But we also have to look at it as if we can't hinder growth because we need these businesses to come here because it's very essential for everyday life and the working class as far as the tax base goes. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, you know, a good example. This past week, uh, I had asked for an agenda item to be put on regarding discussion of activity centers and what can be done to maximize non-residential development in the activity centers. You know, as we laid out the blueprint for rezoning, you know, a lot of people throughout the city have said, well, geez, you know, you're changing you're proposing to change the complexion of our neighborhoods and create mixed use and change the way, you know, a good portion of Northport is going to be developed. But what about those big brown blobs on the map, those activity centers? Why can't you just do all the development up there? Why can't you just load those areas up with industrial and commercial and office, and that's where our tax base will come in. Leave our neighborhoods alone, and that's a struggle for people. I mean, I get it. So it bothered me enough to ask for one-on-ones with staff so I could better understand it. And you know, people need to realize, first of all, almost 30% of our entire city of 104 square miles is either conservation or open land. That's a pretty big number. Set that aside, the activity centers themselves, if you take all the activity centers, they constitute 10%, 10% of our city's land. That's not a lot.
Right.
And then if you take half of that, half of those activity centers are committed. And what I mean by that is the landowners who own half that acreage have already in years past made application, in some case decades ago. And the reality is that the city has no ability to tell those people that they have to build an industrial building or an office park. No way. They have landowner rights that have been vested because they actually file papers. They actually have legal documentation that gives them the right to develop as they wish. And the example of that is Heron Creek. That strip along Sumter was all supposed to be non-residential. It should have been retail. It should have been offices. It should have been a downtown kind of feel, and had the landowner rights in their agreements to swap out and utilize, if they had unutilized residential allocation, to move that to that area. And the city could do nothing whatsoever to stop it. So now you see those big apartment buildings going up. And it's like that in 50% of the activity centers. So when you break it down, there's 5% or of the city's land that we can develop non-residentially in those activity centers, which necessitates looking at the city as a whole and changes in a lot of other areas. People don't realize this; they just don't. And you know, we have people who are experts in this field and who have worked on this project for an extensive period of time to try to create a blueprint that's going to make sense. At 8% of our city's revenue being non-residential revenue, it's just not sustainable. It is not
Right.
sustainable, and it'll result in either cutting services or selling off parkland. That's what will happen if we don't develop additional sources of revenue that doesn't come off the backs of residential taxpayers.
There's one more thing. So you said uh, cutting off services and selling off land, which
Yeah.
would be more than likely parkland. But there's one more thing that is in there that working class, in their last 3 years, working class has been pretty much uh, destroyed by all of the price increases and not the uh, wealth increases of income on a national level. So if on a local level, now I like the local system because locally things get affected like right away. Things are the things that you're doing affects your daily life instantly. Such as if you didn't get involved as a citizen on raising taxes in your area and being concerned about that, uh, you're apt to get a tax rate increase pretty quickly. Where in the federal government, it's projected several years down the road in many cases. I bring that up because the involvement of citizens within what we're doing, it's essential that they understand that you said tax cut and the selling of land. Well, there are groups of people out there that are conservative people with thoughts of keeping our lands, including other people's properties. I mean, I've been on both sides of this conversation, and they want to take private land and say, no, you can't build your house unless you do this, this, and this. Well, we're not an HOA complete city. We're not controlled that way. And I love the fact that people get involved that way, but I want to bring it back to the fact that there's a third component for the working class, and that's truly there's going to be a tax rate increase if we don't get our city structured the right way with the right tax or the right businesses and the right mix of businesses coming into town. And there is, and I'm going to send you this video. It was sent over by Northport Forward, and brilliant video. And it was an hour long, and it was done inside of the Florida government, and it was a really, really direct on how to educate yourself on what a city is and how it should fund itself, which is really a cool concept. And I am going to forge that. I'm not trying to do a punch and run on you at all, because I did get the privilege of watching that earlier, but you've got the privilege of being a commissioner too. And if we don't get this right, the city residents are going to pay for it.
Yeah, I mean, this commission, I'll tell you, is so committed to not raising that millage rate. We do not want to raise taxes, property taxes at all. And, I think if people really understood the trade-off there, there are people who say, well, cut expenditures. Well, cutting, where do you cut? The beef is in police, fire, and parks and recs. So quality of life and safety. How much, do we really want to cut there? What our claim to fame is that we have the best police and fire rescue, and we have great parkland areas and recreation areas. So if you set that aside, if you don't, like you say, if there's only so many places to find your revenue from. And the truth is that the plan will address this if we can continue to build out the city with a real emphasis on non-residential. And I know it's tough for people, even people who advocate for development, because they appreciate it's the only real opportunity to keep their taxes low. And in addition, do what we haven't talked about yet, which is create jobs, for God's sakes. We all talk about inflation and how tough it is for people to make ends meet these days. And that's true. Everything goes up. Insurance goes up. The interest rates go up. Food prices go up. Gas goes up. Everything goes up. Why the hell doesn't the incomes of people go up? Well, we don't even offer enough jobs in our city for people to be able to stay close to home, save gas money, save time, be able to work here. That's another huge reason to develop. And yet, I will tell you, if you go to our commissioner meetings, and again, here was a chance last week for people to see not one person, not one citizen sat in that chamber. And I hope a lot of people, it was a day meeting, so okay, maybe people will go online and look at the YouTube and listen to it and watch it. We also requested another workshop to talk about ULDC changes, but you know, um, it's like these things are, it's just so important that we do this development. Yet when we talked about Toledo 320, which was the newest project there, that was on land that was purposely not put into Orange Hammock. It was never intended to be part of that conservation land, and it was never a part of the estates. Yes, it sits across from some residences. And yes, Toledo Blade at that end has to be widened. And yes, it will be, non residential development. And people still complain. Let's face it, all around that area, there are a lot of developments in the near vicinity. And even people within those communities who have stood up and said, we know we need economic development, we know we need non-residential tax revenue, it's always with a not in my backyard, not next door to me. And I get that. But if not there, where? For God's sakes, if not at Toledo Blade and 75, where? If not at Sumter and 75, if not out east all over the shires, where? Where do you do this? There are always people who will say, not here. Price Boulevard, not here. But how could you not think that Price Boulevard wasn't going to be developed out? It's a main corridor that runs across our city from Sumter to the lake. So I believe me, I am not indifferent to them. I am not even just sympathetic. I truly do empathize, but it's a real tough job. Commissioners and city staff have to sit there and say, what is it? What decisions do we make that really is going to benefit the city as a whole? Because otherwise, everyone will have to face those options that nobody wants to face. Nobody wants higher taxes and nobody wants to cut services. So how do we do it? We've got to increase revenues. And yeah, for those that say, God, why can't it just be the way it is? Let's hold all these people out. Let's not grow anymore. Well, by God, you tell me how you can put that genie back in the bottle. I'd love to do it, but I don't see how. I don't know how. I don't know how you can.
The odds of that happening are slim and none. I say the same thing to a lot of people that I have conversations with, because as we go through the growth period, and we are in the infancy stage, because we are nowhere near where we need to be, and we have got to focus on it, and citizens need to. I love the fight. I love the fight. I don't understand the philosophy behind the fight and sacrifice at any cost. Um, I think there can be a good combination of growth with respect to what we are as a community. But we're also average age in the 50s, maybe still 40s. um, and when you think about that, and 80% of the people drive away to go to work, who would want to be a waitress at a restaurant in our town and not make any money? We've got restaurants that close their doors for breakfast and lunch because there's not enough revenue, because the 80,000 plus aren't able to go there and eat during the day. They go to the place they work. And it's a proven fact. So yes, while we want to be the backwoods of the world and we don't want anybody to know we're here, fastest growing in the nation, being labeled that out in the real world, I mean the reality of it all, there has got to be some communications, and I I deal with a lot of the social media side of it, and I hate it with a passion. I will tell you that. But the social media side of it is that we have groups, good groups. We have bad groups. We have good groups. We have bad groups that try to be good groups. Um, we just have a lot of people who feel like they can vent non-factual information, and then when somebody like me or Commissioner McDowell actually tried to get one of those groups to stop and stop antagonizing and get information that was real and stop the lengthy review everybody had to read through to get to the real information, which was about a sidewalk that was not even owned by the city of Northport, that was not being taken care of because the builder did it and whoever owned it did it. And at the end of the day, groups like that, people like that, even when you give them the right information, they don't want it. So I know you deal with that all the time. I know all the commissioners do. Commissioner McDowell does too. But and I've had these
You know,
conversations with you. But go ahead.
John, I got to tell you, I people people have the right to say and believe whatever they want. I truly do believe that, and I get it that it's a great frustration for people to, especially those who came here and bought here and made this their home when the city was different than it is today. And there's a resentment there that goes along with it. Why? I didn't ask for this change. I moved here because I wanted to get away from that type of life, that urbanization. I wanted a more rural environment. I didn't want all this development. So I get that. And I get that social media has really created an opportunity for people to really express their opinions. The problem is people have looked to social media as an expedient way to discern what's going on, and that gets translated sometimes into what people will consider to be truth or fact, and therein lies the rub. You can't muzzle people's right to speak or to opine on things, and I would never want that. People have a right to a healthy dialogue that helps people forge better ideas and refine ideas. But it is really incumbent upon everybody to fight, to learn truth and what's going on, and to listen to it all. I can't tell you the times, even in the most exciting, I'll use that word, of agenda items, where the chamber is filled with people. By the time public comments are done, half of them or three-quarters of them are out the door.
Right.
People come in, they speak their mind, they'll sit there maybe for a little bit, and then I get people have busy lives, so don't get me wrong. I don't think people should have to give up their lives, but YouTube is out there. Every meeting and workshop is videoed and is available for people in what free time they have to look and watch and listen and learn. And then it helps. Does it solve the problems of some people? Does it convince them that what decisions we make are right? Probably not, but at least there comes along with that process in understanding that thoughtfulness went into this, professional expertise, studies, and that these plans, these decisions are not the result of anyone being in anyone's pocket or selling out to anyone or not considering what's in the best interests of people, because we agonize over this, and every commission does. This is not an easy thing to do, and yet there's processes we go through. People, if they understand it, may not like it, they may still not support it, but they will understand it hopefully better. And that's a tough thing to do. We have, my God, you got Northport Forward holding meetings, you got commissioners holding meetings with the public. We've got public
City
meetings.
the city managers out there hold meetings.
Sunshine is there. Everyone can see and hear what we do and watch the decisions we make. Yet it is so poorly attended, and people have such a little interest until it affects their neighborhood, their home, their family, their pocketbook. And I get that because I was that way most of my life. I was blissfully ignorant of what was going on around me. I just got up every day, got dressed, went to work, made my money, paid my bills, had my family, and was like oblivious. So I get that. But, that's why, for a vast majority of the people, they elect who they think would make the best representatives, and then they allow them to make those decisions. And down the road, if they think those are decisions that didn't work to their best advantage, they replace us. And if they realize that, they've got elected officials who tried to do best for them and for the most part did, then they get reelected. And that's just the bloody process. I don't know any other way. Social media and 24/7 news has been a great thing because it's brought information to people. The problem is society is wrestling with how to differentiate between opinion and fact. And
Right.
it's easy to twist the two up, and it's easy to find all those supporting opinions to help reinforce an opinion you already have, instead of saying, how much more can I learn about this, and challenge my own preconceived notions on things to make sure what I think is really what's right and based on fact and real supporting documents. And it's such a philosophical discussion. How do you do that for people? You just keep trying. We have a sizable communication staff now that the city built, and people will say, my God, did we really need an extra 1 or 2 or 3 people there? Well, yeah, people were screaming, give me transparency, give me inclusiveness, tell me what's going on in my city. We rebuilt the website. It's a much more friendly user website. There's all kinds of tools. You can go on that website and you can actually track by department progress on projects. But people, when I talk to them and tell them about this, they go, huh?
Right. I was going to interrupt, and you went exactly. Here's the thing: people do complain, but do your research. Check things out. I don't like the spewing of information that is. Then you have to do your research, and then when you show them that their information is just a bunch of garbage, they're of the belief, and you cannot correct it, but they're of the belief their information is 100% correct, even though you've shown them it's 100% false. So those of you who are in those groups, this is my encouragement for you, even on this conversation. Do a little bit of research. Make sure we're saying the right things. Make sure we're actually giving you the information that's out there. I'm not going to say we're dishonest. I'm not going to say other people are dishonest. But here's what I'm going to say. If you're going to listen to someone else, be ready for the end result of that, because you may be repeating something that's not accurate, therefore losing credibility on the street. And some of these groups, that was my point to the earlier conversation. Some of these groups that are out there, they have good people in them, but they also have people that are controlling those groups that are bashers and constantly bashing and promote the bash. Well, okay, I I think you're kind of irrelevant when it comes down to that. When you get labeled a basher, because now when there is a topic that you want to work at, you have no means of building a relationship with others to actually get that piece done. And I'm not trying to tell people how to act. I'm just saying that there's a better way of communicating with leaders, with people who are actively in the community working. And being a naysayer about the city, um, it's a turnoff. I may like the person, but at the end of the day, I I can't listen to 100% Northport is a garbage. It's sort of like the people that are out there that want to talk politics and they keep talking about Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump's not in charge anymore. Stop.
That's right.
The we've had 3 years with no Donald Trump, and there are people out there that think Donald Trump still exists as the president of the United States, and yet they yell at you because you voted for him and they didn't. I've never seen such sore winners in my life. I can't call them sore losers because they're not acting like that, but it's like get over that and start talking about the positive steps that are out there in the world, because the city of Northport is building, it is growing, and I've said this over and over again. We are not going to stop growing. You said it. Every commissioner has said it. But this is where you get involved and you try to help carve how it's built and where it's built and how it gets paid for and how the tax base gets relief versus the tax base carrying the burden of payment on, if you want to live in a city that doesn't have any commercial and you want to live in a city that everybody drives away to go to work, then the only thing you have to be prepared for is how to pay for it.
That's right. That's
And so Sean Kirkpatrick kind of got a double whammy here on questions, but is there any update on the Morgan Center and the gym yet?
Oh God, I know they were working on it. I apologize that I don't have the specifics of where they are in the process, but every time I'm over there, I'm like, when is this getting done? And it is not something that's being ignored, but I'm sure it's just caught up in the process of vendors, approvals, materials, labor, you name it. I'd be happy to, if Sean will, along the bottom of the screen, my cell phone and email addresses. If you send me a reminder email, Sean, I will be more than happy to reach out to staff, through Jerome, through city manager, and find out exactly where the status of this sits, and I'll shoot you back an email. That'd be more
and on top of that, he's talking about the Boys and Girls Club, the Mullen Center, the Morgan Center. East Northport needs indoor basketball courts. Are we slated for anything out there?
Yeah, well, the Boys and Girls Club, the city, that's not really a city.
It is not. That's independent.
There are some upgrades. If you can find them, if you go on the city website under CIPs, the capital improvement projects, you can page through some of that. You can see over the next 5 years what the plans are. Parks and Recs have a lot of this stuff slated. When we have new playgrounds slated or replacement fields, upgraded fields, new courts, all those things and those projects are laid in. Not all of them are funded every year. So again, it's one of those things, I'd have to really go and dig in and look and see. But, the Parks and Recs group, they do a pretty darn good job trying to keep their parks and rec areas at the state of the art. We know we need more soccer fields. We know we need some more indoor basketball courts. We need pickleball courts. We need a lot of things. And, it's again, where are those dollars all coming from? Who can do them? We're trying very hard to get some of the development projects that are going on and the partnerships we're forging with nonprofits to consider those things. Out east, we have so few parks. They all seem to be concentrated more on the other end of town. Right. And so that's why, like at Toledo Village, there's going to be a 20-acre public park. There's going to be court fields, baseball fields, soccer fields, all kinds of, park-like amenities, all of which will be built for and maintained by them, not the city, not on the city's dime. So there's a lot coming. It's worth taking the time to go Google Parks and Recs department on the website, the new website. Look at some of the projects that they're doing, and you'll get a lot of your answers. And then whatever might be missing or things that aren't properly explained or as in as detail as you might want, shoot me an email. I promise you, I'll go dig out some answers and shoot them back.
And I'm going to say this because you've mentioned it a couple times. The email address for Phil is pstokes@northportfl.gov. His cell phone number is 941-302-5247. And truthfully, I don't care the attitudes that are out there. I've heard a lot. I only like one. Okay, there's five. There's five commissioners. Use five.
Right.
The last time I checked, when you want something done, it takes 3 votes, at least 3 votes to get something done. So if you're not talking to three, you're kind of counting on one person to carry the torch for you when you have the ability to talk to five.
Yep.
So stop picking and choosing and talk to all of them. Get your ideas involved, get yourself involved. Stop being a pick and choose person and actually be a good citizen and get all of the commissioners involved.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's not a good idea to begin with. I'm not sure.
It's funny. There is an email address for I don't know if it's Northport Commissioners at northportfl.gov. You'd have to double check it. It's on the site, but it gets broadcast. If you send anything to that email, it goes to all five of us. And the funny thing is, depending on the subject matter and how much each of us might know or not know about it, different ones of us will respond. Sometimes if it's really staff focused, we'll forward them to Jerome, city manager, who will then forward them on to the appropriate departments so they can respond. A lot of these questions are things that staff is dealing with on a day-by-day, various departments, and commissioners don't get necessarily involved in them until there's an ask and it comes before commission. But there have been times, and I'll even say it, where I've run into homeowners who have said, resident citizens who have said, I sent an email blast to all you guys, and I heard back from 2 of you, but I didn't hear from the other 3 of you. And I had someone who did that and called me out on it, and all I could do was apologize to say, Jesus, usually if I don't know the answer, I'll forward it, and at that point I'm expecting it to be followed up on. But sometimes people just want to hear back from a commissioner, even if you're going to tell them, I really don't know the answer to that question. Here's who you should reach out to talk to.
Right.
So it is important to do. It is part of our job, and we're here for everybody. We can't always make everyone happy, but we really have an obligation to listen to everybody and to try to address concerns, and hopefully even that's what ultimately is how we get graded on. Even if there's some things and decisions we make that people don't like, they say, well, at least they're transparent, they're open, they're inclusive, and they're not hiding from us.
So have we gotten any update from the hospital? And we have talked about this, and I'm going to get more information over the next couple of weeks. I'm positive because
you can get a lot.
There's a lot going on. Go ahead.
You can get a lot from Jerome when you speak with him. He can probably give you a real up to date on it. My understanding is that there's like regular ongoing conversations. There's just a lot of groundwork to go through in terms of the infrastructure, how the design features are going. Remember, this whole area, this whole redesign, as in every development in the city, there's an obligation, legal obligation too, as these developments, whether they be residential or non-residential, get built, that the infrastructure needs to be built and the areas need to be built so that stormwater runoff, so that basically there's no greater problem caused by this development when it comes to flooding as before they were built. I mean, that's not just a wish and a hope and a prayer. That's an obligation, a legal obligation. Nothing gets built without the proper retaining ponds and re-engineering of our infrastructure to make sure we're not making things worse. People don't get that at all. They go, well, new things are being built, they're being built up. Water's just going to run down into my neighborhood and it's going to be horrible. No, actually, in many cases, it will be better than it was, but it certainly isn't going to be any worse. And people have to accept the reality that storms are worse. When you get 5 to 7 inches of rain in a couple hours, I don't care what you do, it's
I
going to
don't
flood.
listen. The only
You're in a
difference
swamp.
the only difference between 5 to 7 inches of rain here and 5 to 7 inches of rain in New York
Yeah,
is the sewer rats aren't going to be running around on top of the on the
exactly.
streets because the I don't care what city you're in,
Yeah.
that amount of water in that amount of time, nobody is capable of enduring that. But the good news is we did have another flooding situation, but it receded and it was less than 24 hours where all those side runoffs were gone. So they were designed within 72 hours to dissipate. So these are things that again we have public works on, we have commissioners on, we have city manager on, roads and drainage comes on. It's all of these things that we're truly trying to get this information out to the community, and it behooves me on how much information we put out that really sets us apart right now because we have this hour twice a week to get information out that's direct. It's not you're not going and sitting on the dais and saying something else than what you're saying today.
That's right.
This is factual information, isn't that true?
Yeah, that is very true. You know, it's people really have to understand, like, it's so important for people to realize that all this development that's going on is really not making things worse. It really isn't. It is making things better. That in so many areas we will be able to help mitigate some of the flooding that's taken place, certainly at the intersections by Sumter and 75 and Toledo, as those big areas are built out. And all these new neighborhoods that are being built, same thing. You know, it's hard for people to get because they say, well, it doesn't make sense to me. You're putting impervious building in, you're putting buildings and parking lots, you're raising it up. When it rains, where's that water going to go? It's going to come right into my backyard and into my house. And the
100%.
reality is that look at all the retention ponds that are being set up and built that have to be built in order to hold these waters. And they have to be built to certain specs. They have to be, you know, at this point, we're at 100-year floods, you know.
We got 2 minutes left.
Wow.
It's gonna
Where'd that
that
hour go?
I listen. We ran around the block twice. So it's a long journey sometimes, but sometimes it's a really quick journey. Um, we've got growth coming. Uh, I think that the wrap up would be get prepared for the growth. Get prepared to be involved in what your thoughts are. Email and get involved with your commissioners. Watch meetings if you got an hour at night. Catch up. There's a lot going on in the city, and stop listening to other people give you unreliable information.
And
And
really do get involved. You know, it's so important. We really do want to listen to what people have to say. In the end result, there will be people that don't like certain decisions that are made. But it would pain me. It truly would be a horrible thing for people to have said, I wasn't given the opportunity to speak out, to share my thoughts, to hear what was going on. We bend over backwards. It is the honest to God truth. This commission will take all the time necessary to allow people to speak to us, to share their thoughts, and we will hear them. Will we always listen? No. Not always. And to the extent we don't, at least there will be some rational explanation as to why the decisions are being made the way they are. I don't know any other thing that elected officials can do. And then when you grade us down the road on an overview, is the city better off than it was 4 years earlier or 8 years earlier? That'll be our report card, and it'll translate into votes at the ballot box. And hopefully this city will be healthier and stronger 4 to 8 years out than it is now. And
Absolutely. This is John Rawlings with WKDW Radio saying thanks for listening and join us. I did this before and I'm not going to do it again, but guess what? It is Friday, not Monday. I think I did it last week. Friday fun day now because work is just about done. And we got my good friend, Commissioner Phil Stokes. Thank you so much for being part of the show and getting this information out. It's very, very, very important.
Thank you very much, John.
And you have a great night, okay? And everybody drive safe, be careful out there, and really share this information. Share it to your groups. I know they'll take it down, but that's okay. Share it anyway. Show them it's okay to listen to others. It's okay to get real information from a commissioner and not bash them, but listen to them. And then listen, if there's something he said or something they're doing, phone calls, emails, follow up, get involved, find out why the basis of decisions are made and how they are affecting your daily life. If you don't do that, then you're really not the citizen that's involved. You're just somebody who is confused, listening to others, and mad. And really, you could put everything to bed and maybe understand why some decisions have to be made. And you explained that earlier on the side of having to make a decision even if you didn't like it. So have a great day. You guys enjoy yourself. Phil, thanks a lot, buddy.
Pleasure. You too. Enjoy the weekend.
Bye bye now.